Well, this episode throws my theory about this entire season into a wormhole. Might as well just go see the Black Mountain, I guess. Hello there, interwebs! I am here to review the latest episode of Star Trek Lower Decks, this time Season 4, Episode 7, A Few Badgies More. And staying spoiler-free, but as the title suggests, this is an episode that features the return of Badgie. A little bit sooner than I would have thought, considering, without spoiling too much, I thought that Badgie was going to tie into the larger season-long arc, and he may or may not in this episode, but I usually think that that's going to lead into the finale, and so seeing him here was a bit of a surprise for me, and he does come back in a really kind of fun and interesting way. Again, I'm trying to stay spoiler free here, and there's some fun unexpected playfulness with his character that I did not expect. And also, if we're getting the return of Badgie, you have to know we're going to get the return of our other AI villains, also in a very unexpected way. And what I liked most about this episode and the return of all these AI villains is that the direction that they take them all in is not the direction that I would have expected any of them to go. Again, I thought that they were going to be, tying into the season finale in a much more direct way, let's just say. And here it is done in a very kind of interesting and subversive way, and yet very Star Trekian way. Like I cannot describe this plot more without getting to spoilers than just to say that this is very Star Trekian and very Lower Decksian as well, in a way that I really, really adored. And I think it goes to like a critique of what people were like, complaining about last season with episodes like A Mathematically Perfect Redemption and Peanut Hamper, and people having problems with that episode for certain messages that may have been read into it. And this feels like it's a continuation of that and kind of saying, no, we were building upon that thematically. And I really loved it. I'll talk about that more in just a second in spoiler section. But it just feels very Star Trek, and I love this episode just a lot because it was having fun with the villains in a way that it just again feels very Star Trek. And I'm repeating myself because I want to stay spoiler free. So let's just get into spoilers and we will talk about this whole episode. So I just want to start off the spoiler section kind of talking about this episode as a whole, because I was just already kind of alluding to it. I'm in that mode, but I really loved that this episode brought back all of our AI characters, that it was tying into the season-long storyline in a way with Agamis, but they were sort of not the big bad villains, but had all unique stories of coming to earn redemption or finding themselves. Both Peanut Hamper and Animus, and also Badgie as well, all had stories about different ways of accepting accountability, growing, learning through connection with others, that feels very Star Trek. And it goes back to, again, what I said, the Peanut Hamper episode of last season, where I think a lot of people, if they were complaining about that episode, which I liked a lot, I liked that episode quite a bit for numerous reasons, but I understand that if people came away from that episode being like, this didn't feel very Star Trek, where you have a character like Peanut Hamper, not becoming good, and Star Trek should be about people learning to be better, be their better selves. But the important thing for me about that episode that episode is trying to say is that you can go through the motions of doing a redemption, a mathematically perfect redemption, as Peanut Hamper even says, and the episode is titled, but that has to compare with an actual want to be accountable, an actual want to grow, an actual want to change. You can do everything you're supposed to, and yet if you don't feel it, if you don't earnestly want it, it's not going to matter.
For a good cause. You guys didn't want these ships, and I needed a way to show Starfleet that I'm a hero, so they would take me back. How was I supposed to know these old ships still worked? I mean,
And this is the thing a lot of our society doesn't really want to talk about, and I love that Lower Decks is that there's often this illusion to oh, I've put in the work, I'm gonna go away and learn about myself after I did something horrible, but not actually feeling that, not actually wanting to be held accountable, not actually trying to do the work of what it means to grow. And so you put in the work of what you're supposed to do on paper, you've done the checklist, made the apology, not said anything for a while, but then you go back and get to do more stand-up specials or whatever have you, without actually having done the work and not really changed. And change, I believe, is possible, but it has to come with that. And in this episode, I feel showcases that there is change possible if you accept accountability, take on what you should take on in terms of trying to do restitution to those you've harmed, and also that is done through connection and love of others. That it takes loving others and people loving you for that to be able to happen. And that's the only way that you're able to find your way through is by having empathy. And so I just loved all of that in this story. So let's get into the nitty gritty of it, but just as a theme, I think that continues on and is very Star Trek and very Lower Decksian, just with Lower Decks being this like earnest kind show that I really love for that earnest kindness. But we start off the episode with, again, the criticism that we had. I feel bad saying it every time, but it's the structural same problem of we have the ship showing up and attacking another alien, but we get another alien vignette. What I do like about this one is this is the binars, and we don't actually get to hear what they're saying. It's sort of implied, and it's kind of like playing with the structure a little bit, which is what I wish more of the other ones would have done, which is like not just done vignettes, but like play a little bit with the structure. It's like, well, we get the structure now, and now we're doing something weird with it, getting to see like the binar fleet without like actually getting to like hear what they're saying and have to intuit it. I liked that. So there is some starting to play with this format that still I wish it didn't take like they've done this like 7 times, 6 times, something along those lines. Yeah, I've said it enough times, but I liked this one, but the criticism been made. Anywho, I feel bad of that. That'll always be my criticism. Maybe I should stop harping at it at this point. But then we cut back and we see who actually rescued Badgie at the end of, we saw that Peanut Hamper episode in, I believe, season 3. And we learned that it was the, I forget their species, the Vakti. We've seen them a few times in Lower Decks. I can never remember their species names. But the very Klingon salvage looking people. And they get taken over by Badgie. He's just like, oh, come on. And they're just always about salvage. Loved it. It was very fun. Oh, and before we get to that, one thing I forgot is we had the grappler situation earlier that sort of set up Rutherford's arc where he's like playing with the grappler and it's like, oh man, I put people in danger, and Tendy being like, oh, I love that you stick with it. A little on the nose with the thematics for Rutherford at the beginning there, but we got to play with some grapplers. That's some Star Trek Enterprise shit. I'm here for it. My only thing with that is like, why are you standing in front of the shuttle when testing the grappler? This is just safety 101, people. Like, don't stand in front of the grappler. Like, come on. Anywho, it did set up his arc in a very obvious way, but at least, I appreciate what it was doing, and it is a Star Trek Enterprise. And then we sort of get this set up the story where, the Cerritos is going to look after where the Binar ship was destroyed, and then Boimler and Tendi are going off to Daystrom Institute to deal with Agamis and Peanut Hamper, respectively, because they've changed their ways, as we come to maybe learn may or may not be the case. Let's follow the Badgie storyline first, because that was a lot of fun. Both were fun, but this one we'll focus on first. So Rutherford and the Cerritos crew ends up confronted by Badgie, and I love the like gross out like close-ups on him that we get throughout the episode. Like the art on him was just like, oh god, it just like throws you out a little bit, and I loved it. It was a very good use of that style. It reminded me of like the SpongeBob gross out moments that I always loved as a kid. I love that Rutherford's like, no, I have to go rescue my friends, and he jumps off to go and save the ship. But Mariner comes in and is like, no, we're in this together. And they get there, and again, very Star Trekian is that like Rutherford's able to try and change Badgie's mind by actually showing him love and doing what he should have done as a father, is like showing him care. Not that it's a father's fault, as Logic-y once says later on, that like, he wanted to murder him. Of course he wasn't going to hug him at that point, but still, like, I appreciate that it's kindness and caring that it tries to reach Badgie, but then he segments himself off and becomes Goodgie and Badgie, which is very just a fun little pun on Badgie there. Badgie. And I like that we, get the explanation of there's hollow emitters all over the ship, so that's why I can go there. Logistical stuff is taken care of. And I also learned that like Badgie was like segmenting off his code, and that's how he got Goodgie. It wasn't just like some weird, it was like just he was actually intentionally created and forcibly trying to like deny vulnerability, deny himself. Like that's why you see a lot of people doing violence and wanting revenge, is they deny their ability to feel vulnerable, to feel good, to feel caring for others. They try to push it away. And then this comes back and gets reiterated when they try again, and Rutherford tries to get him to see the logic of murdering everybody with the gas, and he's like, oh yeah, that's not a good idea, that doesn't get me anything, like, because revenge it just causes more pain, it doesn't really earn you anything. But then segments off his logic parts of himself, which I thought was very, very fun. But then we get Badgie trying to become a digital god and take over all of Starfleet. And I'm sitting here thinking, because he does succeed in that by going to warp 9.9, which is like, again, warp 10 reference to, I was hoping they'd all become salamanders, because there's a reference to Threshold with that, with like being everywhere in the galaxy. But sadly, no, they don't turn into salamanders, gosh darn it. But this also got me thinking of like, well, if Badgie's putting himself everywhere in the fleet and becoming this AI that infects everything, I feel like Starfleet would have like coded against that by the time of Star Trek Picard season 3, where, if you've seen the end of that season, if they had put in blockades from this, then they wouldn't have had a problem. Let's just say at the end of the season without spoiling what happens there. But I was just thinking of that, like these AI takeovers of everything. It's a recurring Starfleet and Star Trek theme in this modern era because writers hate AI, understandably so, given what's going on right now. Anyway, I love the imagery of him going everywhere, like taking over Deep Space Nine, everything, and then like his like head coming out of the galaxy was just a cool visual image. Like I loved the art on that a lot. But then him being like, oh, I don't need to kill everybody. I'm everywhere now. I understand him connecting again with empathy with others is what saves the day, in connection with others, and having that empathy for others is what allows him to ascend and go to the Black Mountain, the Great Koala, which was a fun, again, getting to see that. I loved all of that storyline. I love Mariner going with them and just like having Rutherford's back and this like constant rejection of vulnerability up until the point of like, oh, you're forced to see redemption. And then we have Good G, who is not going to at all betray anybody, and everyone trusts that totally, 100%. As they, again, test the freaking grappler by standing in front of it, everybody. Come on, everybody. But then this brings us over to the other storyline that I also had a lot of fun with this one. There's so much I loved about this one, where we learn that Animus and Peanut Hamper are sort of like becoming out with this plot to try to get out and pretend that they've changed and then meet up and go and dominate different planets and stuff. And I love that Peanut Hamper is like pretending to like be able to say her lines, and Animus just like changes his light blue, just like, oh, the blue light's very reassuring, as I think Tendy later says. That is adorable and so cute. Like weirdly, Animus is like oddly cute in this episode. I loved him just being like, oh, she's abandoned. Like just the way Jeffrey Combs plays Animus throughout this, and Jeffrey Combs, love him. Of course we do. But yeah, just the way he plays him is just this like weirdly endearing, like, oh, it's like, oh, you cute little guy. You're such a little megalomaniacal maniac. I also love the little bits about the Daystrom Institute, like the group therapy for megalomaniacal AIs, and the movie they're watching with the dog was adorable. Like that's just so funny and cute, and yet of course it'd be something that like Starfleet does, that they like, help, or Daystrom Institute I guess technically is not necessarily run by Starfleet. I think technically, but anyways, like of course they would like be like, oh, let's restitute these people. That's what Starfleet does. The system is about restitution, not punitive punishment. Love that. That's a good future. They are able to have this conversation, and I love that like Animus is very clearly trying to mess with Boimler, and Boimler doesn't really ever buy it for a second. He's like, yeah, I'm a human meat. I'm a Lieutenant Junior Grade meat pie now. And they get on the shuttle and they go out, and like the things that he was using, the wireless things that he was using to garden, help break him out of the ship. I'm like, where did they get lasers? I feel like the Daystrom Institute wouldn't have given Animus lasers on those things, but will allow the little conceit to get the plot moving. And I love that they go to the planet and wait for Peanut Hamper, and Animus is like little, like adorably, like, oh, my girlfriend's gonna show up, sort of thing. And then Tendy just getting really into sand. She goes like, yee, when she like gets to play in it for a little bit longer. That was the cutest thing ever. That little moment is like the animation and the sound that Noah Wells makes for that moment was just like the most adorable thing I've ever seen in my life, beyond even Animus being cute. And then they go off after they find Peanut Hamper's thing. He's like, oh yes, she must be dominating already without me, she's betraying me. And then they go to this planet, and I will say it is a bit messed up that Boimler and Tendy could have escaped at any time, but they let this planet get subjugated, even though like Boimler says, and I think this is supposed to like lampshade it a little bit, where he says like, oh yes, Starfleet can fix this in an hour. I'm still like, that's still a lot of trauma you're causing, people being enslaved and taken over. Like, if Starfleet can fix it, sure, but like, to find out intel, I feel like the ethics on that are a little bit dubious, Boimler. So I will let it go, because I think the episode is lampshading it a little bit and just saying, yeah, we can fix this just fine. But I would argue still fucked up a little bit. But we allow them one fucked up thing per episode, I guess. This does lead them to go and find Peanut Hamper and follow her to the base where all the exocomps are working, and you get to see the adorable little exocomps. I love Peanut Hamper calling him her father, and I love that she actually has changed. It goes back to the theme that like Peanut Hamper has believed it. She actually has wanted to grow and change, and like I really thought that was like a good completion of her arc, and it sets her up to show up in the future as a changed character. And I thought that was wonderful, and I love that that Animus is just adorably like working with the father. It's like, oh my god, your daughter is the best. I love that they're not like girlfriend and boyfriend, but they're just friends. And he even says, it's like, no, I have no intention to be the daughter. We're friends. And he's like, oh, I would love to like, lend a drone to help out. It was so cute. But I do also like that he does get taken back to the Daystrom Institute. He's not allowed to stay there because he hasn't taken accountability and done time for the crap that he has done, and it's still like going to be trying about helping him and still being growing, but he still needs to do that work before he can go and be with her. And I do love the way that like he megalomaniacally sort of is, I will get released and go and hang out with my best friend. It was just adorable. And like the other AIs are like, can you teach me to be good too? I thought was just sweet and loving. And again, very Star Trek. It's the different ways of like showcasing like how you have to take accountability, you have to be vulnerable to others, but you also have to take accountability for the pain that you caused and grow through that. Like I love the message of this episode through these AI characters and humanizing them in a very Star Trek way, because one of the big problems with Star Trek in modern years is that it has often done a lot of villainizing AI. And to be clear, machine learning that we have today that is taking jobs from writers and actors, and at least attempting to, and many other things in our society because capitalism trying to commodify things without actually like taking care of the human beings that are making things, that's messed up. Machine learning is not AI. We call it AI, it's a colloquial difference, and so machine learning is very different and it's being used for capitalist ends in a very messed up way right now. So being very clear on that. But if you're going to talk like actual artificial intelligence within a science fiction setting, Star Trek has sort of mixed the two, like machine learning and AI a lot, and done a lot of villainizing of AI in modern times, where like I feel like Next Generation with like characters like Data did a lot of humanizing of them, and we saw a little bit of that with Zora in Discovery, like doing some positive stuff, and then here doing that as well, showcasing that they are people who can change and grow. I think is also really, really smart and intelligent. And again, being very clear, because I know what people might take it the wrong way. Machine learning fucked up and is being used for terrible things right now, but I like that Star Trek has an even like further eye on the future in terms of AI, and Lower Decks and Discovery I think are showcasing that really well. Picard sadly did not get there, but these shows are, and I do really appreciate that quite a lot. But then this ends with us learning that the ships have not been being destroyed, but they've been taken and stolen, which is very interesting, because again, I had a different theory. I thought like Badgie and Animus and Peanut Hamper would be the ones behind this thing. Turns out that's not the case, but it does go to my theory that I didn't think that these people are actually being killed, because we did lose our Klingon captain in the the first episode of the season. Which I thought was pretty surprising for a character that we had built up for a while. So it does not look like he is actually dead, and we are going to figure out where all of these ships are going to be going, hopefully in the near future, and tying into our probably the finale, but maybe coming up a little bit sooner as well. So excited to see where all of that's going to go. Beyond all of that, I hope you all enjoyed this review, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you all, my friends, live long and prosper.